Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's Energy Efficiency as a Resource Conference session on low-income energy efficiency programs. I am Ariel Drehobel, a local policy manager at ACEEE, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. We'll start this webcast with a few housekeeping announcements and then quickly move on to our presenters, followed by Q&A as time allows. We also have a 20-minute Zoom session after this where you can speak directly to the presenters if you have additional questions. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to all of our sponsors and ally members for their support of this conference and of ACEEE. Attendees are in listen-only mode. Please use the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen to ask questions to the presenters. As moderator, I'll be sharing your questions with the presenters following all three of the presentations as time allows. Otherwise, we'll continue the Q&A in the Zoom after the session, so I hope to see many of you there. Watch for the Zoom link to be posted in the chat during this session, or you can also download it in the resources section. And please refrain from using the chat for any dialogue other than asking questions. If there is an attendee who you'd like to connect with, please use the attendees link on the left-hand side column of the platform. All registrants are listed alphabetically, and you can find a way to connect with them there. Also on the left-hand side of the screen, you can find a resources section. Resources contain a copy of the program in a PDF format, an attendee list for downloading, Zoom links for all of the chats and discussions, and an evaluation form that we will ask for everyone to complete at the end of the last session. Anyone who completes the evaluation and includes their name and a testimonial will receive a $25 discount to attend the 2023 Energy Efficiency as a Resource Conference in Philadelphia. So hope to see many of you there. It'll be 2023 before we know it. Presentations will also be available for on-demand viewing within a few days in the Engagement Hub, and presenters' PowerPoints will be found on their page in the program participant section as well. And now I would like to introduce our distinguished panel of speakers. Today we'll be hearing from Frank Rapley, who's a senior manager at the Tennessee Valley Authority, Caroline Carl, who's the deputy director at Hawaii Energy, and Sarah Poe, who's the manager of energy efficiency at Columbia Gas of Ohio. You can read their full bios in the conference's app. And without further ado, we will turn it over to our first speaker, who's Frank Rapley, who will discuss how the Tennessee Valley Authority is working to address energy affordability, health, and resilience through their low-income energy efficiency programs. And with that, I will turn it over to Frank.
Thank you so much, Ariel. It's great to be here. It's great to be with everyone. I'm excited to talk a little bit about the road we've been traveling for a couple of years now with a program we call Home Uplift, which is an offering for low-income residents weatherization. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get into that. Just a little bit about the TVA. We are the nation's largest public power producer. We have about 10 million residents and businesses in the Tennessee Valley, which covers all of Tennessee and parts of 6 other states. And then we are the sole provider of power to 153 local power companies. These are municipals and cooperatives all across the 7-state area. And we deliver electricity at retail across about 80,000 square miles of service territory. So a little bit about us. We are 100% nonprofit and funded solely from our power revenues. In the Tennessee Valley, we have some serious challenges. First of all, incomes in the Southeast are well below the national average. To kind of put this in a little bit of perspective, we think probably 40% of the residents in the Tennessee Valley would qualify for the weatherization assistance program. So think about 200% of poverty level, federal poverty level or below. And energy burdens in the Southeast are particularly high due to low income and the housing and climate. Although the rates here are, residential rates are among the lowest in the nation, we still see large energy burdens, and that's driven, by the incomes and housing and climate. We have very muggy summers and hot, and we can have quite cold winters in some places as well. Throughout the COVID-19 epidemic, the economic situation has worsened, and particularly for energy burdened families in our territory. And, while we are incredibly grateful for the funding that has been put into LIHEAP to assist with those bills, that's very, very important. That takes care of the immediate situation, but it doesn't resolve the long-term issue of substandard housing that drives high energy costs for many of our residents. So that's the issue that we were trying to work against as we started to think about the Home Uplift program. And we had a vision for what we're trying to do, is to create this sustainable and equitable low-income energy efficiency and educational program and deploy it all across the Tennessee Valley in partnership with our customers, the local power companies, hopefully in the future, healthcare partners, and right now, community-based organizations. And we want to reduce those energy burdens for those residents in need. A little bit about the model. It is a partnership-driven funding model. TVA allocates funds every year for the program, and we then get matches from our local power companies, but we can also take those from other sources as well. For instance, Federal Home Loan Bank, state energy offices, other city or federal funds or state funds. We manage it all through a third-party community development financial institution. So they create the fund that the dollars go in and the match occurs. We work with Clear Result to implement in the field. It is a full diagnostic audit and home retrofit, and then a test out on at the end of the process. And again, we use the federal guidelines for the Weatherization Assistance Program of 200% of poverty level or below for applicants. The measures are what you would see typically in the Weatherization Assistance Program. However, we have additional flexibility because we're not having to adhere to any savings to investment ratio. So we're much more flexible on being able to replace HVAC systems in their entirety. But of course, we do that: duct systems, attic and wall insulation, windows, doors, water heating, lighting, air sealing, some appliances, the things that you would see typically in the Weatherization Assistance Program, along with lead abatement and of course ventilation, fans, and et cetera. So and then there's a complete diagnostic test out at the end. We also provide workshops and family tenant education to make sure that the measures that we're putting in place will have maximum benefit for the family as they go forward. The program is open to single family homeowners, and then also to single family homes that are rental property as well. FY21 or 2021 was really our official launch of the program. We had run pilots for well over a year before that. Because of COVID, we got a late start. We were still able to, in about a half of the fiscal year, be able to get 768 homes completed across the Tennessee Valley. Our average savings is around 3,400 kilowatt hours. We have 37 of the local power companies participating and contributing funding at this point. So third-party contributions and local power company thus far have totaled $8.6 million. That was matched by $5.6 in TVA funding. And our average cost per retrofit is right around $8,300. However, because of cost increases in materials, we think that's probably going to be more like $9,000 as we go into the next fiscal year. Overall, we've done around 2,000 homes or better when you think about the pilots that we've operated plus this year, and we are just into our fiscal year of 22, and we're looking to complete around 1,100 plus homes in TVA fiscal year 2022. There are, other things that we are certainly looking at, particularly on the non-energy impacts side. So we want to understand particularly outcomes on things like health, thermal stress, ability to pay bills, ability to buy food, medication that the residents might otherwise not be able to. So we are working with 3Cubed Research House out of Knoxville to assess all of these various non-energy impact dimensions, and we have just really gotten the first data back in pre and post on the work that we've been doing thus far. So again, it's on NEIs. We were working in the major metro areas: Chattanooga, Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville, and Huntsville. We did a little rural piece in Kentucky and Mississippi. We want to analyze and measure observable changes in health, wellness, affordability, all those things that you would think about that weatherization can provide. We had recruited participants in 2 previous fiscal years. So there's an initial set of interviews that are done before the work in the home is completed. And then we come back a year later and we do another set. And of course, COVID did interfere with us a bit this year, but we were able to get some preliminary results. And we also, use the housing data and upgrade information to calibrate as well. So we think about groups. We had in our treatment group 700 pre, not quite as many post, 572. Control group was actually much more difficult to recruit, but we did have 300 in the pre-treatment, pre-weatherization piece of this, and over 200 in the post. Overall, when you think about just the participants, we had in the households more than 1,000 in the treatment group and better than 500 in the control group. So treatment group, the average household size was 1.9 and control group 2.4. So here are the big takeaways, and some of them are a little bit surprising. Hundreds of these folks said they no longer have difficulty paying their energy bills and no longer worry about having to heat and cool their homes. So that was a big win. We mission accomplished on reducing bills and making their bills more affordable and manageable. And on top of that, we saw very significant reductions in extreme temperatures, 40% reduction in heat, 37% reduction in cold. So versus the non treatment groups, we saw some very significant numbers there. And the total number of medical interventions for participants decreased significantly more than the control group. The surprising thing that occurred, though, was we really expected to see significant respiratory health improvements. However, we just didn't have a sample size big enough to really draw conclusions around that, because we didn't target specifically for COPD or asthma or childhood asthma. So we cast a broad net, but we didn't have enough participants in this particular piece. But there are a number of things that we're going to be doing in the future to drill down harder into this area to understand more about the effect of weatherization on respiratory health, particularly in our area, the Southeast. So we've got a lot of future research in the hopper right now. We are working with the state of Tennessee, TennCare, which is the state administrator for Medicare, Medicaid. We're working particularly with them on the Medicaid side. Many of the people that we work with in Home Uplift are on Medicaid. And so we are in the process of beginning to analyze that actual medical cost data that TennCare has, crossing that with our participants to see if we can see any meaningful reductions from a actual healthcare cost standpoint from the work that we are doing. We're also expanding our work particularly into distressed countings. So much more work on the rural side will will be happening. We want to understand the differences between the rural and urban response groups and what those might mean. And then we want to conduct a meta-analysis on all of this data once we have it, all of the findings, so we can determine what improvements we can make in the measures and recommendations for the Home Uplift program to get an even better result on the non-energy impact outcomes. So that is all work that is set in the hopper to happen over the next 2 to 3 years, actually. But we'll have some TennCare data much sooner than that. But then some of these are much longer term projects. And that is what I wanted to talk with you about today. I'm Frank Rapley. I'm senior manager. There's my information there. I will say just a couple of things. We know that if we can really prove the business case, we believe that if we can prove the business case for health outcomes as a result of programming, we're really trying to unlock that door to be able to partner closely with healthcare organizations, particularly at the state level, to be able to, as funding partners and perhaps for referrals, et cetera, to be able to expand the amount of work that we're able to do in this space. And with that, I will turn it back over to Ariel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank, for your presentation. It was so exciting to hear about how the Home Uplift program is doing, and to hear how you're thinking about adjusting the program in the future and incorporating those health impacts. If anyone has more questions for Frank, and I see some coming in, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll get to those in the Q&A portion at the end. And now I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, Caroline Carl. Caroline will discuss how Hawaii Energy's energy efficiency programs are helping residents and businesses impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And I will now turn it over to her.
Okay, I think you can see my screen. Perfect. Okay, great. Well, thanks, Ariel, and thanks so much, Frank. That was an awesome presentation. So it's such a pleasure to be here with you all virtually today. As Ariel mentioned, my name is Caroline Carl, and I'm the Deputy Director at Hawaii Energy. And I'm going to share a little bit more about our programs, especially in the wake of the pandemic, and what we're doing to really serve our families and businesses. So before we dive in, I did want to share a little bit of background about Hawaii's clean energy transition and Hawaii Energy, who we are and how we came to be. Hawaii's first clean energy initiative was formalized actually back in 2008 with a commitment to achieving 70% clean energy by 2030. Of this, 40% was from renewable generation and 30% from energy efficiency and conservation. And this actually led directly to the establishment of the state's energy efficiency portfolio standard, which set a reduction goal of 4,300 gigawatt hours by 2030. And in order to achieve these robust efficiency goals, our Public Utilities Commission established a third-party administrator model. So they moved the efficiency programs out from under the utility directly, and Hawaii Energy was born. So for the past 11 years or so, Hawaii Energy, which is administered by Leidos, has served 3 of Hawaii's 4 counties, providing energy efficiency incentives to commercial and residential customers, along with energy efficiency education and awareness building. Today, our overall mission is to help families and businesses make smart energy choices so that they can save energy and money and help get us to our clean energy goals cheaper and faster. It's important to know, and I wanted to share that, the state of Hawaii has really renewed its commitment and took a big leap in 2014, establishing the first ever 100% renewable portfolio standard by 2045. And as such, our traditional efficiency programs have really expanded focus to serve customers more robustly. Over the last 6 years, we've been really honing in with the industry on the clean energy management, climate change mitigation, and made a number of adjustments to our own programs to incorporate these priorities to support the transition to renewable and distributed tech. And in the most recent triennial plan, we established 3 pillars as the foundation of our efforts. So these include clean energy technologies, which are rebates and incentives for energy efficiency and grid service tech, accessibility and affordability, which is enhanced programming to ensure that all customers are included in this transition, and then economic development and market transformation, which is really the core of our education and training, focused on community engagement and workforce development. And I would say that of the 3 pillars, increasing accessibility and affordability is really one of our most important focus areas. I think a lot of folks envision Hawaii as this picturesque vacation destination, which it is in so many ways. However, what's often not recognized is how challenging the cost of living is here for Hawaii families. Just to give you a sense, just last month, the residential electricity rate was about 30 cents a kilowatt hour, and the median cost for a single family home was over $1 million. And as a result, over 40% of our population rents. And you can imagine that these statistics have only been further exacerbated by the pandemic, which even recently, according to a report issued by the Aloha United Way, approximately 59% of households here in Hawaii are struggling to make ends meet. So at the time when Hawaii's first stay-at-home order came, like many other states in March of 2020, I think all of us were really hopeful that this would just be temporary. But our Public Utilities Commission took immediate action. They issued a statement on a COVID-19 emergency and called for action plans that would ensure reliable and affordable essential services, achieve clean energy and climate goals, and support economic recovery for COVID-19. And the PUC at the same time supported Hawaii Energy and it's shifting our standard program operations to continue to fulfill our mission, but also support economic recovery throughout the pandemic. And our team really took this as a call to action. In August of last year, after a number of iterations, we published our COVID Recovery and Resilience Plan, which outlined short-term response initiatives that we already had underway, along with longer-term planning that was to be implemented and maintained throughout the coming year and ultimately aid in Hawaii's recovery. And the COVID Recovery Plan was really a re-envisioning of how we focused our programs. The reality into the first 5 months of COVID was that composition of energy demand had shifted really drastically. Commercial energy use was down over 13%, and residential usage was initially up 17% and then remained at about 6% increase in the months to follow. So people were at home. Our main economic driver, tourism, had completely vanished, and along with it, 26% of jobs at one point. Ultimately, at the end of 2020, over 100,000 jobs in Hawaii were lost due to COVID, which is the highest per capita in the nation at the time. And our recovery started early on with our short-term goals that focused on immediate actions, and then we looked to the longer-term goals that would really aid economic recovery through investment in energy efficiency as a resource. One of the most immediate things we could do was focus on marketing and communications to be a resource for customers. Our overall goal was to increase engagement with customers during the stay-at-home order that we had 2 of, as they managed their energy usage. Our strategy was to put ourselves in the customer's shoes and ask ourselves, what would they do to know? What did they need to know? How could we tell them and to make informed decisions? We leveraged the way that people were already communicating and getting information. And we were really, really sensitive to financial and emotional concerns. And we focused on education and wide reach. Our deployment included fun and helpful assets and content for customers, like these coloring pages for kids at home during stay-at-home schooling, and increased efforts to keep folks engaged and educate, like competitions, giveaways, and challenges and promotions. We also did quite a bit of media outreach as part of these proactive efforts to educate customers on rising costs in the home and collaborated with digital content houses to push out these resources. Ultimately, this helped us secure about 23 earned media features, which was valued at over $65,000. And this really drove people to specialized content on our websites with website tips and pages, and increased the unique views on our website by 70% and almost tripled the new users when compared to the previous 3 months. We also tailored our email engagement for both residential and business customers. This more than doubled our weekly newsletter subscriptions to regular email newsletters from the last 4 months. So it was really successful. And we also found out what people were most interested in. They wanted tips for their home, and they wanted energy-related workshops and training. And the last example from our immediate response programmatic efforts I wanted to highlight is our free home energy kit distribution program, which was administered in conjunction with a number of local partners. Overall, we ended up distributing 2,000 kits across 4 islands within the first 2 months of the pandemic. And these kits really proved a great addition to locations that were already acting as drive-through food distribution sites, providing a free and easy way for households to take action and reduce their energy usage. And in the kits, we included flyers with low and no cost energy saving tips and a summary of increased rebates that we were rolling out to support energy efficiency purchases during COVID. Now that I've shared a bit more about the initial marketing and engagement efforts underway, I did want to share some of the program longer term efforts that we developed and deployed throughout the year. Unfortunately, Hawaii had a very high percentage of students who were left with distance learning as their only option for many months throughout the school year. And while some students were able to adapt, many were not as fortunate due to the lack of adequate learning devices and high-speed internet. So in an effort to really promote digital equity, we sought some new and creative ways to support by purchasing 500 Energy Star laptops and distributing them to public schools located on the Big Island and Oahu. And we targeted participating schools that were located in communities with some of the lowest median incomes within the state, and they all serve very diverse populations. So prior to the pandemic, we were already doing and piloting with some of these communities on energy efficiency educational workshops. So we're hoping to enhance the digital experience this year, leveraging the laptops and distribution. Oh, sorry. So I wanted to close out my presentation by sharing a bit more about our Energy Relief Grant, as this is one of the most exciting new programs that I think we've developed in response to the pandemic, and it's also can transition to a continued effort to showcase energy efficiency as a resource this year as well. When the shutdown first hit, we knew we had to go beyond our low income efforts specifically for families and develop something to support our small businesses, which really serve as the backbone of many communities. So we developed our Energy Relief Grant to help really fully fund energy efficiency improvements up to $25,000 for nonprofits, small businesses, and other qualifying organizations that were experiencing economic loss due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As I mentioned, tourism was completely shut down. We saw a drastic shuttering of doors for many. And for those businesses that were able to pivot, like restaurants moving to takeout models, the impact on their business operations was really substantial. So we also recognize that our contractor base, many of which who are small businesses, could use this grant as, a potential to generate business for them and keep them afloat during a really tumultuous time. So we established a $1 million budget, and looking at historical average commercial project costs for energy efficiency projects, we figured we could issue $25,000 grants for about 40 projects, which all had to be completed by the end of our program year, which was this June 5th, 2021. And due to this limited budget, we established a competitive grant rather than a first come, first serve. And we developed these review criteria to put the applications in some priority order. For example, we had a number of churches apply for grants for commercial refrigerators and freezers to increase their capacity to store food for food distributions. And many of them served low-income areas where participation at food distribution skyrocketed last year. And so applications like these received higher scores because of the communities they were serving. we worked really similar to our other efforts. We worked really hard on the marketing and communications to get the word out. I think at the beginning, to be honest, we all were a little nervous and concerned that we wouldn't get a lot of interest because with everything else going on, there was so many competing priorities. And in our experience, new programs usually take a little longer than just a month to get a month or two to get participation moving. So we started with a press release, which was picked up by a number of local news stations. And then we recognized that many businesses were already looking to government and nonprofit resources to stay afloat. So we made sure to give them a heads up on the grant opportunity. And counties like Honolulu and Hawaii County put up the Energy Relief Grant on their resources page for those seeking COVID recovery funds. I think most importantly, we leverage relationships with industry groups and trade allies who we work with on professional development and sector approaches already. And they shared the grant opportunity with their members and their customer base. And our internal Hawaii Energy team really came together to spread the word about reaching their industry and community and even personal contacts. In Hawaii, we find that information really gets shared through what we call the coconut wireless or word of mouth. So when people were inquiring with us about the grant, they would say, I heard about this grant through my neighbor or my cousin or my friend. And I think the other thing we learned was that calling it a grant as opposed to a rebate or incentive was really more effective, especially in the backdrop of COVID. So here's a summary of the results. We actually ended up with over 400 applications and $6 million in requests. In the end, we were able to award over $2 million with some transfers from other programmatic budget areas. And of that 2 million, about 700,000 went towards the purchase of an installation of Energy Star commercial kitchen equipment, which was huge for us. We're estimating that once all projects are complete, the overall energy savings will be about $450,000 per year. This is one of my favorite examples. I mean, we saw a lot of participation from the food industry. 30% of the applicants were restaurants, while the other 8% were farms and community-supported agriculture, food distributors, and manufacturers. And a lot of the restaurants that had to replace old refrigerators and freezers that were on their last legs. A lot of that is a result of the cost of shipping to Hawaii and in between islands. It's huge as an adder. So a lot of owners can't afford new equipment and they rely on the used market. So this case of the Big Island Brew House, it's a restaurant and brewery in a rural town on the Big Island, and they received a USDA REAP grant that covered the other portion of their project costs in addition to our grant, which having a matching funding was a big part of the evaluation in looking at our review criteria. So, in closing, I just wanted to, I hope that some of our experience with the grant and some of our other outreach and marketing can help to inform for other folks' efforts, and we can share ideas. But I think what we saw as a shining star with the grant was that it supported both our most vulnerable businesses and increased contractor work opportunities, which ultimately bolstered community support, and that leveraging low and no cost marketing distribution methods like news, nonprofits, and the coconut wireless was really successful in the backdrop of COVID. So I think that I am at time, but I just want to say thanks again, and I look forward to the question and answer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caroline, for your presentation. It was so exciting to hear how Hawaii Energy was able to pivot and provide much needed support to Hawaii residents and businesses throughout the pandemic and all of those lessons learned. Folks, please continue to add questions for Caroline in the chat. So now we have, let's see, about 9 minutes to address some questions from the audience. If folks have additional questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. And we will also have, again, 20 minutes once this ends in the Zoom. So if you want to come in and chat with all of us, we'll be there. So the first questions that I have were directed at you, Frank. So let's see, a few folks were asking questions about some of the data that was collected to evaluate the Home Uplift program. So folks wanted to know if in your evaluations you measured if the program reduces arrearages and shutoffs, and also if you collect data on demographics such as race when evaluating your program, and if so, if you've been able to use this data to more equitably reach communities of color with your program.
Right. So in terms of the shutoffs, we would need to get that data from our local power company, Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. So we have no way of seeing that data, but that is an interesting thing that we probably should look into with them, and in all cases. But we would have to get that data from the local power company. In terms of demographics, we actually skew heavily into minority neighborhoods. So we're extremely well represented in African American communities. The problem, where we are seeing the problem, is we are not effectively reaching the Hispanic community. And so what we've done to begin to address that is to partner with local groups who are serving the community, Hispanic groups. So we're working with Centro Hispano of East Tennessee in Knoxville, for instance, to develop an outreach plan so that we can better and more effectively penetrate the Hispanic community. We do collect all the demographics on our program participants. We also skew more elderly because we are we're working primarily in single-family owner-occupied houses. Typically, these are individuals that are aging in place. So we see a lot of a situation where people have owned homes for years, and then one of the spouses passes away, and now they're in trouble making ends meet, and we see quite a bit. I did notice there was another question about workshop materials. Yes, we have them. If you can just drop me an email, I can connect up with that. They're available through our local power companies, but I'm not sure you can get to them directly. But I can certainly, if anybody's interested in those workshop materials, and we do have them for all the way from kids to adults.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank.
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to direct this next question to all of the panelists. So all of you discussed different strategies that you're using to reach customers, especially in response to the pandemic. Can you each share briefly what you'd say has been the most useful or impactful outreach approach to find applicants? And I'll turn it maybe to Caroline first.
Sure. So I think I had shared a bit in my presentation about the impact of the Coconut Wireless here and networking. So from a trust and recognition perspective, I think we have really leveraged our community partners, and even in some cases, we had some family members, friends that really advocated. We had one woman make her own flyers, like replicate our flyers and get them out to her neighbors. And so it's been very grassroots, but in terms of trust and effectiveness, I definitely think that has gone a long way for not just our COVID recovery plan, but our other direct install efforts that are largely focused on LMI customers. Beyond that, I think the partnerships with with the government, different, I know Sarah mentioned working with the city. That's been really impactful for us as well with the resiliency planning, and then kind of layering in our efficiency offering. So I don't know if there's ever one thing. It's always a multitude and having a lot of irons in the fire, I guess.
Awesome. Sarah?
Yes. So, Caroline, I am very impressed that you have folks who are making their own flyers to share with their neighbors. If you have tips for us to get customers to do that here, would love to do it, because I think that word of mouth and hearing it from a trusted source is really one of the best ways to get the word out. It's just obviously hard to do. I know we've heard from folks that they don't even believe the program is real until they participate. So having that trusted source tell them, yes, this is real, and really a wonderful program is something great that we could do. So, but I completely agree. I wish there was one thing that I could say this was the silver bullet that helped us get folks into the program and make people aware of it, especially during the pandemic. I think it's been, multiple touch points and multiple ways to reach customers, whether it be through, bill inserts, which I said, they continue to work. Folks continue to use them and sign up for the program. Emails continue to work. And then, as I mentioned, I think that it's challenging sometimes, but those local partnerships, the providers in the state, they're constantly out there working to try and get customers to enroll in the program. So I don't think I have a great answer for you. I think it's a little bit of everything, and just continuing to look for great to reach folks. So hopefully that helps a little.
Awesome.
And Frank, you're unmuted now.
I am.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just like it's been said, we use a variety of approaches. A lot of times we're able to get referrals from the local CAP agency that handles weatherization. If they have a waiting list that they can't get to, then that's one way we get applicants. But we've also done outreach directly in communities. We've targeted promise zones in Nashville and literally gone door to door with volunteers. We've hosted community events and then registered families through those as well. But once the word gets out in the community and people understand the program, then typically in every neighborhood, there's a neighborhood champion. It's somebody that steps up who knows everyone in the neighborhood, and the word of mouth. That's what you've seen in other places like in Hawaii. The word of mouth is huge. Once people understand it's real, it's not a scam. It really doesn't cost anything. Word spreads pretty fast.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. So it looks like we're just about at time. I have a bunch of other questions that I had prepared that maybe I'll ask you all in the Zoom. So I want to just say thank you to the speakers for their presentations and to attendees for participating in today's webcast. And we will now be moving to the Zoom for the next 20 minutes. The link is in the chat, and I hope to see many of you there with some questions and discussion. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.